The Human Torch was denied a bank loan.
We've spent the past however many weeks, months, slagging you off for it, and in the space of about 1 minute, you managed to completely sweep all of those insults aside yourself, and trump everything we've said about it and make it the saddest thing that's ever happened. Well done, Gabe.
Scott, rescind the dong. Rescind the dong. And welcome to another episode of the Neutral Cider Hotel podcast. My name is Gabe Cook, and coming up a little bit later on the show, we'll be speaking with co-founder Sam Fitz and head cider maker Greg Johnson of Washington, D.C.-based cider company ANXO. We'll also be tasting a range of their ciders, basically everything that co-host Grant can get into the country. Fantastic stuff. And finally, we've asked you, the listeners, for some American and Canadian cider suggestions, and you have delivered and some. So we'll be revealing those suggestions a little bit later on in the show. But first,
here we go.
Here we go. This one's actually just a gratuitous Ciderology by Gabe Cook plug, as it happens. I was alerted by... There it is. I was alerted by Taz, Girl with the Cider Review, friend of the show. Hi, Taz. That she endeavored to order a copy of Ciderology by Gabe Cook via Amazon in the US. And they have run out of stock, apparently, which on the one hand kind of makes me feel, kind of proud, and sold a few copies. I don't know how many they sent over, probably like half a dozen or something. But so I emailed my publisher to say, well, could you send some more copies out, please, so that this adoring audience of one person who wants to purchase this book is able to do so. And I quote verbatim the response from the publisher: "We won't be supplying any more stock to Amazon US in the near future because the rate of sale has dropped under the amount needed to offset the warehouse and shipping costs." Now, this is slightly disappointing. So basically, what it amounts to is just me saying, "Hello, USA. Hi, Canada. Dear friends across the pond, please, 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 can you personally and invite your friends, family, anybody that you randomly meet, socially distance, obviously, we're in a pandemic, and ask them to try and order a copy of Ciderology by Gabe Cook, because if we, there was an addendum to that, there needs to be an order of several hundred. I'm not just talking like an extra 30. I need half of the population of Washington, D.C. to try and purchase a copy of Ciderology by Gabe Cook, so that this shipment, this care package of joy and love and cider can make its way across the pond and facilitate all of your cider educational need. But I did a little check, and I went on to Amazon.com just to see whether it was out of stock, and there seemed to be a handful of ones still there, including something under the title of collectible. Well, that's news to me, so I wanted to see what that was about. Signed by the author. Who the ruddy hell is trying to sell a signed copy of Ciderology by Gabe Cook? And dare I say, I think it was actually less than the RRP, than the recommended retail price. So USA, please show me some love. If you want to get more copies of Ciderology, let's fill that warehouse. Come on, people. In the meantime, showing the reach that our fantastic podcast is starting to have in some of the other cider broadcasts or in other bits of conversation, anytime that I get mentioned, which is always awesome. It's now in association with Ciderology, which it wasn't really before, and then associated with a ding. Like somebody actually put an emoji of a bell in a post to me the other day, or like in the chat. So, We're reaching far and wide. Anyway, enough about me, my dear friends and co-hosts, Grant Hutchison, Martin Goodwin-Sharman. How we doing, chaps?
This week I was on would you say a rival podcast? A podcast that isn't ours, so I guess that makes it a rival podcast.
It's only a rival if they're like equal and or better, but no.
Oh, it's definitely worse. It's the craft beer channel Bubble podcast with Johnny Garrett, who Gabe, you put us in touch, and he mentioned he wanted to have a chat with me, and so we did, and it was lovely, and it was just we explored quite a lot of things, covered quite a lot of different topics, and it was super interesting and a lovely chat, and it seems to have gone down fairly well. So if you've not listened to that podcast yet, once you've finished this one, go and listen to that. Don't feel like you have to subscribe or rate or review that one, but give it a listen. Just that one episode.
Just listen from afar. Yeah.
To be honest, it was. I hear your fucking voice enough, and I'm sure the feeling's mutual. So Stone to Glass Houses, but I put that on, and I was just like, a lot of the conversations we've had, and they're probably on the cutting room floor and in some episodes. But it was just nice to hear it, especially with someone who clearly loves Frightened Rabbit a lot. And it wasn't just like, oh, so you do music, oh, and you do cider, because he's a beer guy. So it was it was really heartfelt. And you covered a lot of important things, and what a good show, man.
Brilliant, thanks, man. Well, if that's not endorsement enough for listeners to go and check it out, then what is? I'll be down in the pit with Gabe and 500 copies of his book.
And a lovely place it is too.
It is.
Oh my god! The closest I got to a big shout out is a Instagram post. The Righteous Russet. They posted about the yellow Newtown Pippin, and they posted a huge thing here. And Bertie Bob Fleeman said, cider shit, I can only imagine this in a SpongeBob voice now. So I like that the ding has sort of permeated the culture, and so has Newtown Pippin. I was glad I've ruined that apple for people. So you're welcome, Bobby.
Nice one, Martin. So there we go. That's our rambles for this week. Let's do a little research and see what's happening in the news. And now here at the Neutral Cider Hotel, it's time for the news. This week, what have we got? Grant, kick us off.
I've got an exciting new cider club that started called Brum Cider Club, Birmingham Cider Club. Yeah,
go Birmingham.
Discovered that on Twitter this week, and I think influenced by Manchester Cider Club that Dick and Kath run. And has moved online. They're doing a very similar thing, and on the 20th of February they've got their first Brum Cider Club with Sam Nightingale from Nightingale Cider, and it's the actual event. It's on Eventbrite. It's free, and you can basically buy your ciders from the Nightingale website. So you can go to nightingalecider.com and buy the Brum Cider Club tasting pack there. You can get a pack of 6 or a pack of 12, and so you can either have one each on the night, or do it with someone else on that night, or have one and then save one for later. But yeah, it's just another example of how it's spreading, and cider clubs can still happen online when we can't all meet together.
You said you saw it on Twitter. Did you see it on our Twitter or your personal Twitter, Grant?
I don't remember.
I only ask, and that sounds like, I'm sorry, listeners, but I only asked because I don't know if I was drunk, but I believe I instigated the genesis of this club because they were chatting on our Twitter, sorry, about how good the cider club is in Manchester, and they want to start something up in Birmingham. And I was like, do it.
Take the credit. Totally take the credit.
So yeah, Brum Cider Club, you're welcome. But no,
angling for a guest appearance for month 2.
It's more the opposite of like, I was just double checking that I hadn't imagined this, but I definitely remember that I cannot remember the name of the person who set it up, but they were tweeting about it because we were linked to it. It was in the episode with Dick and Kath, so it was like with that social media thing, and a point of it is to chat to everyone that interacts with the pod, and if they're going to set something up that's going to get people into cider in Birmingham, like Dick and Kath have done it in Manchester, I cannot fucking wait to see the people that drink cider in Birmingham. So
yes,
props for setting it up. Well done, guys.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
It's brilliant. And it's just another example, isn't it, of the increased awareness and interest and drive. And this is obviously a platform that works in terms of it being a really engaging and fun and, spreading the word on these fantastic ciders. Nice one. Martin, what have you been listening to this week?
So this week I have mainly been listening to the Pellicle podcast. So Matt Curtis recorded the Pellicle podcast episode 20. Does cider still have an image problem? And a big part of it is he's like Lily with her article that she was returning to, and it's in our episode, the earlier episode that you can go listen to. But this is Matt returning to writing that he wrote years ago about the cider industry, and it actually kicked off quite a lot of fuss because he was writing it from a beer writer's point of view, but also an immediately hostile kind of angle. And the podcast really gets to one thing that's interesting for me. It's like the writer's identity, and he wears his heart on his sleeve and he explains himself and he admits when he's wrong, which is refreshing for one, but also it isn't necessarily, does cider have an image problem? It's the labels. It's, does cider have an image problem from the lens of the drinker and the beer drinker? So for me, a big sort of takeaway from it was that he was saying, like, don't fall into the same pitfalls that craft beer fell into, and I remember doing this, where it was like that idea of old man beers and like your time is up, it's the new, and you kind of forgo tradition because the new is better. But the new should always be built on the foundation of the old, like the standing on the shoulders of giants. And I think one thing I will say is that a beautiful thing with the cider industry and the people that I know that drink it, not everyone, obviously, you might be listening at home and thinking, this isn't me, but a lot of people drink cider regardless of its size, production, everything, heritage, the label. So I will go into a pub, and if they've got a nice cider by a traditional maker, example, and we spoke about him, Watkins, I would happily buy a pint of Watkins above most things. Like, I don't need it to be Method Trad, the newest this with fruit on skins. Hello, In Touch. But I don't need the innovation, because unlike beer had this reactionary cause from the get-go, where craft beer was, we're doing everything differently. And I think a big problem actually for cider is that a lot of people that are coming to it, a lot of the ciders that they love from new makers have been made by other makers who are using old traditional styles. So like traditional farmhouse cider is essentially natural cider in my eyes.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
It was interesting. Yeah. It was really interesting. Listen to someone with that much experience in beer and into cider, and with, I think, you have that, Martin, but you've got more experience in cider than Matt does.
Sorry, Matt.
I know, sorry, Matt, but like, so there were things that we, you know, I think that when he talked about don't forget the old guard of cider makers. I don't think that's happening. I think cider makers now who are making what you might describe as modern British cider.
Whoa!
Hang
on.
Hey, I didn't mention a book. I just said a thing. I just said 3 words.
Rescind the dong. Rescind the dong.
That's the title of the episode, Gabe.
Yeah.
I think those makers are well aware of what's going on before and are appreciative of it. The new set of drinkers might not be. And I guess that's maybe what we're saying is that's down to people like us and to promote that story and that heritage. But I don't know. I had a hard time with it, with the whole narrative of it, and how do you bridge that gap? Because at one point he said Roger Wilkins he referenced specifically saying, well, he'll be the last of that cider maker. It's like, well, you're
relevant now because the cure for COVID is in full flux. We had the vaccination, so thank you, Roger.
And he is responsible for that.
Thanks,
and you know, as soon as everyone's vaccinated, he's fucked. But yeah, you know, saying well, Roger Wilkins, he and that cider maker won't survive. But then in the same breath, saying we need to keep them alive. I don't know.
Did you I guess recognize his position saying it? Because and this is key to that episode. It's Matt talking about Matt's view. It isn't him, I guess, as a publisher for Pellicle. It's him as an individual drinker and his experience. Because I think happily, and I will throw it into the hat, I think one of the ciders that we should try on the show is Hex. Pretty much anything from Hex. Because that's a traditional maker that I fucking love. I know Gabe's given me a couple bottles accidentally by leaving them in the pub. Thank you, Gabe. But it's that idea that a lot of us, we celebrate, and I do definitely. You look at cider shit, every bottle on there is $7.50. It's in front of a gorgeous blue sky. Obviously, I've trademarked that, so don't fucking try it. But all of them are 750s and by new cider makers doing all this and this and this. That doesn't mean I don't love those ciders that I get. It's just, for one, they're kind of harder to come by where I am right now. But growing up in Cornwall, they were in every kind of corner shop as like, this is my local cider maker. I think the view that a lot of craft cider drinkers are going to be as feverish and ferocious as the craft beer drinker is kind of a over-the-top exaggeration in a good way. I think it's wanting of a better industry, because I don't think cider drinkers are that kind of relentless. I think to the detriment of the whole industry, they're kind of more placid. I think they like the equilibrium that something that's fermented to dry by an old school maker with native yeast is fine by me.
Yeah, but that's the thing, though, isn't it? It's those people that are now taking issue with new makers who are doing that, and as you say, all they're maybe doing is presenting it differently. So how do those new makers and new drinkers embrace and include the maybe craft drinkers or cider drinkers who do drink something that, as Matt said in his podcast, that you would previously describe as scrumpy. That's maybe made in exactly the same way, but is presented differently and is promoted differently and doesn't have the same excitement around it, purely because of those marketing and presentation aspects. Like, how do you bridge that gap?
Gabe has spoke about the Emperor's New Clothes on the podcast before, and a lot of that chat in it.
Yep.
And we're going to have to now pretty much bow down to the Ciderologist because we've set him up with this
I
question.
guess so.
That's like, I could feel you honestly in the corner going like, motherfucker, get ready. But Gabe, with the episode, you've listened to it, old guard, new guard, what are you saying as the Ciderologist to both of that in terms of the podcast?
That both are absolutely crucial and that both are entirely intertwined, and that in order to try, as I think Matt said, in order to try and ensure that there aren't some of the rifts and challenges between sort of old guard and new guard, to maybe to not sort of refer to the sort of the producers in those kind of terms, although you have to because of the nature and the intent. When you go down to it's easier for cider because with beer, you've got the cask ale production methodology and those kind of more modern contemporary beers that are produced in an entirely different way. And it's about being, sort of live and pasteurization and process and how kind of things are done. With cider, so many of what would be considered the modern guard are actually being made in the most kind of traditional ways. You look at Oliver's or Ross and Y or Nightingales or Little Pomona, they are making minimal intervention kind of ciders. I think that some of the pushback from the smaller traditional producers comes from the fact that it's the way that the ciders are presented, which is with considerable high value perception. And I think that there is a real strong root and movement, which I understand that cider is considered amongst some of the more traditionalists as being for the people, of being a rustic drink, a shareable drink, something that isn't meant to have that massive kind of high value perception. I suppose everything comes back to the fact that cider is a range and a spectrum of drinks, much like kind of wine is too. You go to you go to France and you'll go to the local little winemaker, the Cave, and you'll get your litre of fantastic kind of rustic raw kind of wine straight out the cask for like €1 a litre, and that's a brilliant experience. That doesn't preclude you from having great wines presented at a very, very high price per bottle. It's about understanding that there is this range and this diversity and this spectrum, and that everything has a part to play. Well, there we go. That's what's going on with the news this week. Coming up next, our chat and tasting with ANXO Ciders Sam and Greg. So now here at the Neutral Cider Hotel, it's time for this week's interview. And this week's guests are only our second from outside the UK, so they must be pretty special. Inspired by the bold ciders and food matching of the cider heritage of the Basque Country, this cider maker and restaurant from Washington, D.C. has gained cult following across the US and now all around the world. With a focus on bone-dry ciders made only from apples, checking into the hotel this evening, it's Sam Fitz and Greg Johnson from ANXO Cider.
Thank you for having us.
Welcome. Now, straight in, my glass is empty. What are we drinking? Sorry to be crude, but I'm just a bit thirsty tonight. Greg, you've already got something cracked open. What have you got open? And because we've got a few here.
Well, I got Hereford Gold open. That's actually all I have with me right now.
Well, that's fine. There we go. Martin's in. Happy days.
Here we go, mate.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us.
Tell us about it while we pour. Tell us about the Hereford Gold.
Well, Hereford Gold is kind of like the best of both worlds, UK and America. So we partnered with Tom Oliver to bring over a blend from the UK, and then we blend it with our spontaneously fermented Gold Rush apples from the Mid-Atlantic to just make a really awesome kind of UK American fusion cider.
Oh, damn.
So
that's good.
It's good, isn't it?
That is really good.
Who texted who? Is Tom like, oh, I really want to work you guys, or were you?
Yeah, I wish I could say that Tom texted me, but not the case. I was lucky enough to meet Tom and a bunch of other folks at Royal Bath and West about 4 or 5 years ago, and we grew our relationship with Tom out of that. But the project Hereford Gold was definitely us going to Tom, and it was really because we loved the West Country cider of the three counties and beyond, and we found that there was just no way for us to replicate that experience using American apples. There's just something really unique about it, and so we pitched the idea of exporting, quintessential UK cider and that flavor in a way that we feel like can only be made there to us in order to share with the American consumer that experience. And then we put Gold Rush apples, which are high in acid, and we carbonate it, and that kind of placates the American palate a little bit. It takes that traditional English feel and it adds a little bit of American flair to it.
So talk a little bit more about the American palate then. That's something that maybe cider drinkers over here might not understand what that is, and what Americans expect when they open a can of cider.
I think that our consumers expect acidity. I don't know if that's typical of the American consumer that would drink something that's more that's sweeter, honestly, and maybe made in larger production. But people that like the American craft experience, I think, are drawn more towards acidity because we don't have as many of those classic tannic apples, which, that is a con in that I love that flavor, but it's also allowed us to celebrate acid, which I think we have in spades. And so our Gold Rush apples bring that like nice bright acidity to the blend.
Well, this drink specifically, obviously, it's a marriage of two styles, but it's an odd one in that like it's super light, bright, citrus, zesty, and then it's all on the finish that like sort of West Country, like Herefordshire, three counties, like grippy tannins. Usually with these kind of blends, especially between two countries, you get kind of like it's like two flavors sitting on top of each other, whereas this is quite harmonious. Was that like a distinct choice for you guys, or was that just like a good thing that came out of the blending?
What we did is we went to effort to naturally ferment our portion as opposed to when we make Cidre Blanc where we pitch wine yeast. And so it's the same apple that we use to make Cidre Blanc, and it's the apple that we work with the most, which is Gold Rush. But we put it through wood and we ferment it naturally in order to make something that will marry better with Tom's cider.
We also worked with Tom specifically to have like what is coming from his end to be a little bit on the lower acid side so that the higher acid Gold Rush would help balance that out instead of like having maybe something with a lot of acid and very little tannin and funk. We definitely try to go really heavy on the tannin end with him so that, it was definitely a much more harmonious product in the end.
So you said that, you've described that America, the US doesn't necessarily have these tannic cider apples. How did you discover that existed then? What was there a cider specifically that you tasted, or you read about it? Where did you discover that there were tannins in apples that you could use for cider making?
I think that Greg and I both came from craft beer backgrounds. Just that was like more of our introduction to cider. Me more so than Greg being focused on beer. But we had access to ciders from Oliver's and even ciders from Ross on Wye through beer importers. And so, and then also to some extent, Spanish Cidra and ciders from Brittany. So it was really, for me, and I think for Greg as well, our exposure to tannin was through like very specific products that happened to be imported in the States and then made a really big impression on a generation of people like me and Greg. So from like a product point of view, it was really these iconic brands that were so different and like really opened our eyes. And then Greg has experience working with tannic apples that he can speak about, because it's not like they're non-existent here.
I mean, I kind of got into cider like a long time ago when I was getting into craft beer, but at that time there was like woodchuck, I think Vanderbilt was kind of starting to pop its way in. There was Hardcore, which was the predecessor to Angry Orchard. And then I was also working in like a bottle shop at that time, but there was also randomly we would randomly have like some DuPont or a couple other like ciders from the UK or France, and those were always the intriguing ones to me, but we could never really get them where I was at in Michigan. It wasn't until like a little bit later on when I started doing there's an event every spring in Michigan called GLINCAP, the Great Lakes International Cider and Perry Contest, where I would go to do like the judging and the seminars and all that. And that is like when I really opened up to like, there's a whole lot more going on in cider than just dessert apples flavored with blueberries and have enough sugar, to turn you diabetic in like 2 bottles. But but yeah, that was like a whole like eventual journey until I got to go into Virtue Cider, kind of like not in their earliest days, but their earlier days. And that's when I really got my first like hands-on experience working with some more proper cider apples. And having gone and worked a couple other places after that where they did not have that same focus, I couldn't stand it, and I just had to get back to it.
Yeah,
because it's far superior to a lot of just making cider, like swell cider for the masses.
It's one of the things that I really enjoy about what you guys do, and to be fair, a number of your cohort on your side of the pond as well, is that your desire and your willingness to invest in the process and to really get into it. The idea of I first met you, Greg, when you came over for the very first blending of the predecessor of Hereford Gold. What was it called again?
Oakle Pitchard,
of course. And you had spent some time with Tom, and we met at the Firefly in Hereford, and that was actually with my brother the meeting, the very first decision to make La Saison des Poires, this drink that I didn't really have much to do with other than just drinking it primarily. The pear beer hybrid with my brother, but just the idea of and the concept of you coming over to embark and to embrace upon that is an amazing thing, and I commend that. In terms of your focus on the apples only, why do you have such a strong focus on that? Is it that your pride and your passion of exploring it, or is to be like a counter to something other?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Gabe, the latter part is interesting because I hadn't really thought about that. But I think as we grow, I think we really are trying to be a counter to what's out there. I call it the flavor game. That's what we don't play. And I have had lots of beers and ciders that are flavored with things that taste amazing. And so I'm not like sitting on any high horse. But I think that our brand has a lot of value because we are a counter to what you see everywhere. You're always going to know that what we have is made only from palm fruit. I say that because we may or may not have some pear things coming out in the future. But
a wee teaser there, eh?
I think, being dogmatic about our process is enticing to our consumers. But Gabe, the real reason that we're an apples only cidery is because we've always been about exploring what apple focused cider can be. And by only using apples, we stay true to our mission of exploring what the apple can be. And if we start adding other things into it, we can make great products, but I think we get away from exploring the apple. And that's what we're really all about. For me and Greg, I don't think there's anything more exciting professionally than to just get word that we're getting some amazing apple, like that we have to do a bunch of work on, it's like, why are we excited that we have news of this incoming thing that we have to put hundreds of man hours into? Why is that what gets us so excited? But like, I can send Greg a text at midnight that's like, dude, I just got 1,000 gallons of Arkansas Black coming next week. And it's like, you're like, yes,
Well, at first it's like, fuck, but then yes.
It's midnight. I'm trying to go to sleep.
Like my wife doesn't care anymore. Like she used to care. She doesn't care anymore about, my Apple joy for a future project, but at least I can text Greg about it. But it's fun, you know?
Yeah, for us in the UK, the heritage that we've got, it's kind of either a massive blessing or a curse, because it sort of limits the progress that can be put forward, but it holds it in a place, in a sense of place. But how has the land of the US and the law affected you guys as cider makers?
You know, I think probably all over the world, alcohol is really highly regulated. It's bizarrely regulated here in roundabout ways. The most notable thing that's happened recently is that until about a month ago, we were not permitted to put our cider in 12-ounce cans if it was 7% or higher. So you'll see that all of our cans are labeled at 6.9. It literally was in America until a month ago illegal for wine or cider 7% or higher to be in a 12-ounce vessel as opposed to a 375 milliliter vessel. So all of our ciders had to be labeled at 6.9 or less. That law literally just changed. So you'll start to see ciders from ANXO that are coming out over 6.9%.
Okay, whoa. Can I just say, don't do that, because it's under a really nice duty level for me to import. And I always thought it's like 6.9. Oh, he's clever there. He's always been thinking about UK exports. But yeah, just maybe the export ones just stay at 6.9.
Grant, you'll be happy to know that going to 7% or higher is now legal for us, but it comes with still a ton more paperwork, and we also might have to completely redo our labels. So we're only going to do that for a very few amount of ciders. You know, like ciders that would naturally be like 9.7%. You know, we have some apples with bricks that equate to ABVs at like 9.7, and we don't want to have to blend those with, 4% cider anymore. We'd rather just release them as like something that is akin to, like, I hate to compare to wine, but you get the reference. Like it could be like the high ABV stunner from a single varietal apple.
Well, I'll still take it. It's fine.
What about cider do you love? Like, what took you from craft beer and drinking? I'm the same, where I started out at a craft beer bar and have been working in the scene for ages, and I found cider through it. But what was the jump that made you go, fuck, I want to actually commit everything to this?
I think Greg made that jump before me, so I'll let him answer that first.
It was probably about 8 years ago now, somewhere around then. I was in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I was like working around the beer industry, had been doing so for about like 6-7 years. And I had just grown tired of everything that the beer industry was, and mostly is now. I mean, there's exceptions and not everybody's a bad player, but there's just all the fad chasing, all the, just having to kind of like one up each other with like, who's going to make the, like with like Brewdog and a brewery in Germany, like who's going to make the highest ABV beer, or like, just doing all that stuff. Just like I grew incredibly tired of it. And I had already like been kind of like introduced to cider at that point. I was a home brewer, and I was making like cider at home. I lived in a very apple rich region. West Michigan has a lot of great apples. Well, a lot of apples, maybe not a lot of great cider apples, but a lot of apples. So I was already like kind of going down that path, and I was looking for some changes like on like my beverage career path. And I just happened to come across like the job opening at Virtue back long before it was Anheuser-Busch, and just kind of jumped on it and just kind of kept running with it more and more. After that, like, just, I don't know, the beer industry, beer's boring to me these days.
Yes. Simple answer.
And for you, Sam?
Honestly, I have a pretty similar story. I was a beer buyer that curated beverage lists for beer-focused restaurants and bars across DC for over a decade, and I was the first certified Cicerone in DC, which is like a sommelier for beer here in the States. And I started to get bored of beer in a lot of the ways that Greg described, but I think what was most interesting to me was when I started to get really jaded at the end of my time as a beer buyer, I started buying cider more avidly. I ran a place that had 24 draft lines, and I gave one draft line over to cider. And I was kind of rotating through all the options. And honestly, because I was buying in a price conscious way, I was buying half barrels, which is like a 50-liter keg, and looking for things that were in a price range that worked. And whatever I bought, like it all just kind of tasted the same, or the same with flavors like cherry or hops or something. And so I remember I brought in some 750s from a producer. I won't say who they are because I don't have the nicest things to say, but I brought in some 750s from a producer that I was told are like the great American ciders and have so much apple character and are made like wine and are like so different than beer. And I brought in their whole range of ciders, and I have a pretty good palate, not amazing, but good. And I tried all of them. And like, honestly, like I couldn't understand what there was to appreciate in the ciders. Like I honestly was just kind of dumbfounded. They all tasted kind of appley. They all had wine yeast character. They all like were back sweetened in a very gentle way. They were very clean, you know, but like they bored the fuck out of me and were sold to me as something that like would rival, a place, a wine that shows terroir. And so I was like really just lost. I didn't get it. Like I didn't get it. And I felt like there was like certainly had to be a lot more to it and a lot more to explore. And like that's kind of where my journey started, was like just trying to like find where the beauty and the value was in the apple, because like I certainly wasn't finding it with what was available to me at the time.
Usually people have a positive thing of like, wow, this is mind blowing. And you sound like you had, what the fuck is this? What the fuck is this?
Yeah, let's find better.
I can do better.
And then the end of my story is that I was kind of like on this path of revelation, and I went to the Basque Country with my best friend, who is our business partner, Cooper. He does all of our labels. I went to the Basque Country with him and saw Basque people like drinking sidra everywhere, and like as a part of culture, and like having fun but being responsible, and with like in family settings and communal settings. And I was just like, okay, like here's something that deserves my attention. Like these people have figured it out. And then subsequently I went to Royal Bath and West and figured out that there's a different but equally valuable, culture of cider drinking in the UK. And that's just what was like, we don't have anything like that in the States. I mean, we talk about like in the colonies, people drinking beer, and they actually drank cider and not beer. So that story is bullshit, but we don't get any value out of the cider side of it, Anyway.
So you visited the Basque Country. I'm assuming that's maybe where the name came from.
Yeah.
Was on that trip. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
ANXO is the nickname for Basa Haun, which is a Basque mythological creature that we feature in a lot of our graphics and stuff. But the going there was when I decided that I wanted to open a Basque influenced cider restaurant, is how we started.
And obviously the culture and everything around cider is really, really important to you. How do you try and either create that in the US or bring that back from where it was before? Because there is a history of cider in the US, not the same as in the UK, but there is one. How do you bring that back to people's attention, and get people excited about it in the same way you are?
I think our philosophy in terms of how we want our patrons to appreciate our cider is similar to that, like weaving into culture, in that we're not really looking to make the new release that causes people to line up. We'd much rather be the cider that's in your fridge for every day. And so in terms of our, philosophy of sales, I think it's pretty similar. In terms of the liquid that we make, we started drinking just Sidra and have grown into a product that's canned and carbonated, and it's not Sidra, with the exception of one product we make. It is something that in influence 5 years ago to have things that are truly dry and express apples has grown into this thing that we make now. We don't make Cidra, we make ANXO cider. And I think ANXO cider, for better or worse, is kind of its own thing that Greg and I have created over 5 years of working together and working with the apples we have.
You say for better or for worse. I'm not even going to say worse. Every cider I've had from you guys has been a fucking banger. Like it's a different appreciation here. It's like in the same way that a lot of people in the States like yourselves go to like the Basque and go to the UK and find the culture there. What's really nice is being in Britain and seeing like these fucking, for us, high acid, super pineapple fruity expressions brought over. And Grant brings this over, but you're just like you say, I've got 4 in the fridge and I've brought them upstairs and I'm probably going to have them all tonight.
Me too.
Think about it this way, because Grant also brings in Eve's cider. So, if you asked me or Greg who makes better cider, ANXO or Eve's, I'm going to tell you that we'll have the same answer, which is that the answer is Eve's. And it's because it's a different like, and when I said for better or worse, the Eve's mentality is to live on a homestead that you care for yourself, to grow your own trees, to be truly in touch with your surroundings and your season, and to make a product that you turn your tanks over once a year. That is not what we do. And that is like full devotion to making absolutely the finest thing you can make. And I think they knock it out of the park with that. Our goal is to make 10 to 40 times as much cider as they do, and to buy all of the same apples that they work with, meaning that we're supporting that volume of farmers. And I can go to sleep at the end of the night saying that I would rather, if I had one cider, drink a 750 that Autumn and Ezra make than my cider, knowing that we buy an incredibly large amount of apples that everybody on this podcast wants to see thrive and be a part of the future in both America and the UK. And they're really just different. They're different things. And there's so much room for both of them and a lot of other iterations that I think it's great.
Yeah, well, and being different things is its positive aspect. Like I used to run a bottle shop in Finsbury Park in London, and you used to chase the hype and sell all like the beers that it was like you get one case and one per customer and this. And I think on the outside you're like, oh, these must be selling good. And then you see some beers like just 4.5% hoppy pale ale. Not going to rock your world, but people would buy it in slabs because it sounds silly. It's an extension of their home as well. Like I've got my beer, here I am, and you guys bring that to cider. So it's like the core range element of it is for drinking. It is a drink. Its primary function is for fucking drinking.
I do think there is a problem in the States where any quality cider falls into the issue of being considered to be for an occasion. Like a good 750 of cider. I think most people that like them like reserve those for special moments, and I think that cider needs to be something that also has products that are just in your fridge all the time, and we do a lot of our local consumers. When I look at the people that are buying from us, we have a lot of people that clearly only drink ANXO cider, or else they would be drinking way too much alcohol to survive, because I see how much ANXO cider they get for the household. But, we have people that get, they get 1 or 2 cases every 2 weeks on a recurring order. And that's showing me that they just keep ANXO in their fridge. It's not for like graduation. It's for whatever PM in the day you start. Yeah, Tuesday. Right.
So should we open another can?
Yes, please. I'm literally waiting.
I know you guys, it's early for you guys, but us here in the UK, it's, drinking time. We just been to the fridge for another can. Gabe, you said you'd already opened one. What have you opened?
The Cidre Blanc, which is kind of that's kind of your flagship, right?
Greg, do you want to tell us a little bit about the Cidre Blanc?
Cidre Blanc was the first cider we made when I joined up with ANXO, 4 years ago? They're almost 4 years ago. I moved down to DC, and Sam was like, well, we have 1,000 gallons of Gold Rush. We got to figure it out actually before you get there. So I had actually never worked with Gold Rush as an apple before, but just knowing what it was, high acid and all that, I picked kind of like one of my reliable go-to yeast from Lalvin. It's QA23. It's just kind of like a white wine, soft blanc-ish type.
There's big fans of that on the podcast, mate. They're going mad at home now. It's like...
it's a great yeast, and it's very reliable. So we started fermenting that first lot of Gold Rush juice with QA23, and came out pretty well, and then just kind of snowballed from there. That was all Gold Rush from Winchester, Virginia, which was like our initial source for Gold Rush, but now we get Gold Rush from how many places? Like probably mid Virginia, Winchester, southern Pennsylvania. So we have like several different farms and localities we're getting Gold Rush from. And we basically ferment all of our Gold Rush with that yeast, and try as we can throughout the season to blend it as equally as possible. And that's kind of like how we make that cider. It's just meant to be approachable, dry, obviously, easy to drink, a little bit of like a kind of like Sauvignon Blanc character going on from the yeast varietal. But yeah, just like a good everyday approachable cider.
You said dry, obviously, then, and all your ciders are dry.
Yeah.
Why is that specifically? Because I know it ferments naturally to dry, but you seem to make a marked point to be almost not sugar rather than, we just don't do much after that.
The American market for the longest time, and still to like quite a big extent, is like filled with sugary, overly sweetened ciders.
And you guys don't drink those at all.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if it's a Keebs cider, but I personally won't drink just like most sweet ciders. I mean, depends on the maker. Like something that might be a little semi-sweet, or maybe dosaged with something. I'll drink those, but I'm not going to go buy a sweet 6-pack of cider off the shelf at all.
Yeah.
Just doesn't appeal to me.
You've mentioned here in conversation, and it's apparent on your website and through everything that you do, that the relationship between yourself and the farmers, the growers, is a really important one. Is that something that you personally believe in, that you think is something that is an important purchasing decision and a factor for consumers? And then as a secondary sort of question, you talked about buying these Gold Rush from different places. Do you notice a sort of a difference in the flavor presentation and profile, and what problems does that cause you, or opportunities, I suppose?
Yeah, I think buying from farmers that we have relationships with is a little bit selfish, because we want to make sure we have access to the apples we want to work with. And a lot of the apples that we're purchasing are ones that are very likely to get ripped out if they don't find a recurring buyer. So that is a really important part of how we use our purchasing power in order to influence what's grown around here. And then you can also talk a lot about, keeping money in your local community and whatnot. But obviously we work with a lot of other communities, so you can only stress that so much.
Yeah.
As we speak to our UK friends, Gold Rush is a really amazing apple, though. I wanted to pull it out. This is an actual Gold Rush apple.
He's got one. Look at that.
Yeah, so it's February, right? And this apple, we will press Gold Rush that is stored in cold storage without any CA. So no gas, just cold. We will press them as late as June or July, which is insane.
Really? Incredible.
Yeah, that's how well this apple stores. But in February, this is still an eating grade apple. Like, It's awesome.
Oh my God, he's dead.
It got him.
But yeah, Gold Rush is an amazing apple. It stores forever. So what was funny about this cider is that we opened the cidery in June. Obviously, Gold Rush was the only apple that our farmers still had because it keeps longer than anything else. So the reason it was available to us when we opened is also the reason it's become our best apple. It's the apple we work with the most because we can process it for like 8 or 9 months out of the year.
With that process, then did the business model get built around that specific variety as the juice?
Yep. Yeah, we got Gold Rush. Greg made a great cider. We were immediately out of apple season, so we went 3 months with no apples. And when we were ready to gear up again, we decided to go big with Gold Rush. And then in every business plan we've written in terms of production schedules and how to operate an urban cidery that can produce 8 or 9 months out of the year, it's all based out of Gold Rush. And what Greg and I have started doing is we literally won't take any Gold Rush until the next calendar year. So like in September, when apples start hitting, we take literally every other apple that we work with in September through December. And then in January, we just start a constant stream of Gold Rush where we'll ferment probably like liters. We'll do like 20,000 liters every 2 weeks, starting in January for like 7 or 8 months.
That's amazing.
And so like we're a pretty small producer. That's a big undertaking, you know?
Yeah. Can that have an off year at all where you're like, oh fuck, we've got less this year. Let's do more specials. Like how as a listener listening in and hearing about this business built on this, how does that fluctuate with the natural growth of apples?
Well, one of the things that's not maybe that sexy to talk about, forgive me, but you know, in terms of margin and profitability, our prices fluctuate a lot each year, and we can't really pass them on directly to the consumer. You know, we can't just like call Grant up and be like, hey, we're raising prices on everything because of a bad growing season. So in terms of like the sustainability of our business year over year, we're 4 or 5 years in now. We have to take a look back at what we've actually been paying, because there's a certain price we like to pay for Gold Rush. But in bad years, what winds up happening is we wind up having to pay a lot more to get the volume of Gold Rush that we need. Whereas if we have a great year, then we pay a lot less for the Gold Rush and we're a more profitable business. So finding that middle ground is hard. We have had 2 quality control issues. One was, in cider making, you are encouraged to let your apples hang as long as you want, right, for flavor development. So like one of the first things you're taught about cider apples versus eating apples is you tend to let them mature longer on the tree. And we went to our Gold Rush growers a couple years into buying Gold Rush that we loved. And we said, you know what, guys, like you always pick your Gold Rush in mid-October. We like it, but we're told that if you let it hang until the end of October, that it will be better. And can you try that? And I think what we learned is that rationale comes from places that don't pride themselves on acidity. Because when you let the apple hang for that long, you start to lose some of the acidity. And so we wound up with really ripe Gold Rush that had more tannin and more cider-like quality, but it was way lower in acidity and pineapple and starfruit notes, and it wasn't Cidre Blanc. So we had to go back and tell our farmers, like, we were wrong. You guys were right. Just October 16th is good. But it was an interesting thing to learn. Like that thought process is definitely good for flavor development and tannin. But if you want acidity, that's not necessarily the way you want to go across the board.
Well, let's take the opportunity to have a little sort of taste and talk about the Cidre Blanc here. It's not the first time that any of us have tried it, but I suppose it's the case that every time you try one of these, there's inevitable that there might be some sort of slight, deviations. I've got to say, Greg, I think it's tasting better than it ever has. That combination of the cleanliness, but the amount of texture that you're able to get out of something that is effectively bone dry, to give real structure, but that accessibility at the same time. Man, it's a winner. It can suit so many different occasions, and the fact that you've got it in an awesome, 12 ounce 330 ml kind of can gives it obviously that proposition. If you were to pour that into a wine glass and give it that presentation mode without giving anybody, as Martin is drinking right now,
the aroma on it is fucking astounding.
It's amazing.
Like you said,
It's beautiful, man.
It's like kiwi, citrus. Yeah. What's the apple like just by itself before it even goes through fermentation? Like, what are the characteristics there?
Do you all have Golden Delicious in the UK? Is that something you're familiar with?
Yeah.
So Golden Delicious is a crap apple, right? It's really terrible.
Fuck you, Sam. Fuck you.
Oh yeah.
It's a terrible apple. It's not really high in acid. It doesn't have tannin. It's it's not even necessarily like high in sugar. And
It's what your auntie always has in the house, isn't it? Oh, grab yourself an apple. There's a Golden Delicious. A fucking Golden Delicious.
maybe they're different Golden Delicious that we sell in the different countries. But the thing about a Golden Delicious is that the one great thing about it is that when you bite into it, the aroma is actually quite nice of a Golden Delicious, and I'll give it that. And that's really what I think it has going for it. And so this apple is a descendant of Golden Delicious, and it has a lot of the same aromas that are very floral. You get some of the fruit notes that you eventually get in the flavor, but you get a lot of florality in the nose. And I think that comes from its Golden Delicious parentage, but then it has acid and spades and just an incredible crispness, which obviously doesn't translate to the cider. When you're drinking it, you should be getting that aroma, that floral aroma, but then you get big notes of starfruit and pineapple and like these bright, fresh tropical fruit notes. I think it does remind me a lot of Sauvignon Blanc wine, which you get from the yeast that Greg was mentioning. But it's kind of like I always describe our ciders as lean. I don't know if that's something that translates to your market, but like totally. Our ciders are like, they pack a huge flavor. This is like a fruit punch, but it's totally lean. So you get all that like flavor and impact up front, and then you just process the cider, quite frankly, way too easily. So be careful.
That's so easy. When I brought this over and the way it's packaged, the way it's presented, I think a lot of people will expect it to be sugary sweet, something, smashable, sessionable, and it is. And then they'll look at the ABV and they're like, "Holy shit, that's 6.9%."
Yeah,
it's fucking lethal.
It's not. And it's incredible the amount of, like you say, the amount of flavor and punch that it has, but it's it's not flabby or fat. It's just so lean. Yeah, that's exactly the right word.
Concentrated. It is the right terminology. Absolutely. And really interested and really enjoying the packaging and the presentation too. Obviously, it's got a lean and contemporary in terms of how you're trying to present it. But I'm a big fan and advocate of trying to give the consumer as much information about how it was made and therefore how it kind of tastes. So you've got about the apples, looking at the Cidre Blanc. Obviously, it's for the Gold Rush, the sourcing, the area that you've got it from, the yeast that you've utilized the wine, and the vessel that you fermented it in. Is this information that the consumer is demanding, or that it's sort of reaching out in the same way that sort of the craft beer drinkers want to know how it's been made and what hop varietal has been used, etc.?
I think it goes to your point, Gabe, about it being our brand being kind of a counter. I don't think that consumers are asking for it, even though you might get that kind of transparency with hops. I don't think that's what the cider consumer is asking for. But by presenting them with something so different, if they see value in it, then they can't find it elsewhere. I mean, if you find our cider literally anywhere in the States and you appreciate what we're doing with the labeling there, you literally can't find another brand that will give you any sort of transparency like what we do. And so it's more about creating a devoted consumer more than anything else,
It's something that I would like to see a lot more of in the UK, and the idea of partly the transparency, but partly also just the cider maker taking the opportunity to present this information, which would be of interest to consumers. That I don't think that the cider maker necessarily always recognizes that the consumer wants to know more about how the product is made, the provenance, where it's sourced, etc. Talking about the links that you have with those growers and with those farmers, that's something that that I think an increasing number of consumers in the UK want to kind of like see and recognize too. So it's just something great that we're able to get into the UK market now. I've been a big supporter and champion of there being these kinds of products from the USA into the UK to try and sort of help drive some of that hype and that sort of understanding and that kind of like modernity. So good on you for making these drinks and good on Grant for bringing them into the country. But on a slight seg, Sam, you're a bit of a bowling fiend. We hear through the grapevine. Tell us, what's that all about? What's your best score? What's it all about?
That's a funny reference because like that's a pre-COVID thing. I haven't been bowling in a year, and so like I'm like so caught off guard by that question. I think my highest score is I think somewhere in the 250s, and man, I would like really nothing more than
somewhere in the 250s. Well, that's only that. You've only got 10 numbers to pick from, Sam, so...
You know exactly.
I mean, even if you'd said 250, wow, that's incredible, man.
That's like the David Brent thing of being like, yeah, I'm in my 40s. You're 49. Yeah, 40s. Yeah. Somewhere in the 250s, 251. Yeah, in the 250s.
You probably wouldn't be surprised to know from my appearance that my attention has shifted to mushroom foraging. So that would be a more appropriate catch up on my COVID life.
Well, dude, honestly, we've had 2 ciders so far. We'll probably do some later, but dude, every drink from you guys has been crushable. Almost, in spite of the alcohol, I know we've said it, 6.9. Comparatively to wine, it's lower, but this doesn't drink like wine. It drinks like very fresh, light cider. Mm-hmm. So the fact that you guys have managed to get all that character, bring it from the apple, and especially bring it across to us in the UK. These are available here. They're just lovely little bastards. They're so good.
Thank you so much for that. I mean, honestly, crushable is, I think, the quintessential word to describe ANXO cider. I agree with you wholeheartedly. They're crushable things.
I like the way you ignored lovely little bastards. You're like, yes.
You can use that.
Might not resonate as well over here, but I'll take it.
Greg, tell us, for the obviously still in challenging circumstances, but the year ahead, are there any new projects and new opportunities or new apples or new brands kind of coming out that you're super excited about?
There's a lot going on. We're getting ready to open up a secondary facility sometime this year, and we just got a couple new to us fooders to help us process more naturally fermented cider. I'm hoping to get those online soon so that we can just process an incredibly large amount of Albemarle Pippin. Which is going to be yeah. That's going to be really fun.
As in kind of Albemarle Cider Works, Virginia. These are these great heirloom apple varieties that you've obviously got access to sort of on your doorstep, that with your skill in the stewardship, especially with the wild fermentation. Scott, can we introduce a horse of knowledge here if you have that technology available to you? Oh, there she blows. A fooder, for those of you, dear listeners who are listening, is a very large wooden vessel that you can manage easily with some valves and taps and different bits. But it's a great environment for fermenting ciders, especially if you're doing a wild, or as you've put on another can, native fermentation. I quite like the term native. That's that's not one that I've heard before. So there we go. Just wanted to make sure that the horse made an appearance at least once in tonight's show.
Gabe, I think Greg was underselling our new facility. I'd like to expand on that just a little bit. I think you'll enjoy it. We've always operated out of small like restaurant spaces and not out of warehouses. Greg has a collection of like small facilities in DC that we work out of. So we're finally opening a large facility in Apple Country in Pennsylvania, with, a real loading dock and, all the things that your listeners want to hear about, like structural integrity of floor slab and, OSHA regulated and all that. But we're finally going to have a place that's like out in Apple Country that, when you all are permitted back to travel to the States, you can come and see a real cidery in action. And we're pretty excited about that. And that's going to allow us to make a lot more of our products year round. Happy Trees, which is our flagship natural ferment cider, is going year round. It'll be 100% Albemarle Pippin. So it will be a single varietal natural wine made from apples in a can. And it's going to be year round. I think it's going to kick ass. So that will be really exciting for us. Stoked about it.
Yeah, Greg, you didn't sound fucking enthusiastic about that at all.
It's because he has to do all the moving and all the building, and I sit here in my pajamas and get to do interviews about it. So I can't really blame him.
Yeah, I have to travel through 3 different states to make it work. So
yeah,
we're just unraveling ANXO.
I'll be much more excited in about 3 months when we're a little bit more underway there.
Oh, dude, honestly, I can't wait. It's one of the things I've never been to the States, and all that this lack of travel has done is kind of galvanized the thought that I just need to fucking go. And there's definitely, the problem is with all the cider makers, there's like a few in a concentrated area, but you're so spread out that, like, for us in the UK, we go, I'll travel across the UK and travel these cider scenes. It'll take me a fucking week just to travel the fucking thing, but I am going to do it, and you guys are definitely on the top of the list. So, like, cheers for making some killer drinks.
I will say, I think it's a lot easier now. Like there is now actually cider culture in this country, and I didn't really feel that before. But if you were looking to come here for cider travel 5 years ago, I think you would have been even more right than you realized that, like, it would have just been a few people that were like really long distances away. But the culture here and the community here has really grown quite a lot, where I can't help you with the different geography. It's just a much bigger country than there. So you are going to have to travel bigger distances. But I think now it's really easy to seamlessly go from great cider experience to experience the way that Gabe has a couple of times. I think you should really do it. It's we would all be very welcoming.
Yeah, well, dude, I'm hoping to write a book called Modern American Cider.
Whoa. Do you know what? You've actually just been beaten to it by Dan Pucci and somebody else. I forget who his contributor is.
Craig Cavallo, and you can buy their book on our website. Gabe, we should talk. Maybe we can add your book to our listings.
All right, there we go.
Well, Sam, you can actually buy that book on Amazon, which you can't do with Ciderologist.
Okay, well, there we go. That's that wraps up the interview. Greg, Sam, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. We know that you're incredibly busy as all of these new projects and new opportunities can continue to show. ANXO just continues to go from strength to strength under challenging circumstances. These are exciting times for you, and we look forward to following your journey and to continue to drink your ciders courtesy of your wonderful importer and distributor, Mr. Grant Hutchison. Thank you very much. So for anybody who wants to learn a little bit more about ANXO cider, what's the best sort of places on the internet for them to head to?
If you go to ANXOcider.com, that is where you're going to find the best information about our ciders. We do have a website, ANXODC.com, that is meant more for your time in the city here. So if you travel here, you can check that out. But I would say ANXOcider.com is the best place to check out all the information about our great ciders.
And for the benefit of those people who are less au fait with sort of Basque cider heritage, ANXO is ANXO, is it not?
That is correct.
Yeah. So ANXO is ANXOcider.com. Guys, It's been a joy. I'm 2.5 cans down. Definitely going to be 4 by the end of this podcast. So thank you very much for making some fantastic ciders and bringing much joy to us all. Cheers to you guys, and hopefully we'll see you either over here or over there sometime in the not too distant future. Cheers now.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers. Pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you.
And now it's time for the listener questions, where we take a crack at answering the inquisitive minds of you, our dear listeners. Martin, we're doing something slightly different this week. What are we going to be doing?
Yeah, so on social media, I actually put forward a question instead of having it be, oh, tell us something and we'll answer it. But I said, I'm asking for an episode, what are your favourite American and or Canadian cider producers? So we actually had quite a big response on Twitter and Instagram. So just, Gabe, do you want to reel them off?
Crikey, here we go.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Okay, so first up, we've got Patil, who says, Annapolis cider in Nova Scotia. All are incredible, but the Geneva Crab Rosé is the best because of the Swiss links. Good cider maker, and I can attest to that because they appear in Ciderology by Gabe Cook. So good shout, Patil. Michael Asharanko says, Locust cider, New England amber. I'm going to say I don't really like the name Locust cider.
Weird choice. Weird choice. Pick a bug. I mean, ladybird cider?
Dung beetle cider. I don't know. So, apologies, Locust cider. I'm sure you make great cider, but I'm just saying.
You wait till they come on the podcast. It's going to be like Ricky Lake when they Ricky Lake.
Awkward.
Ricky Lake cider.
Next up, Perky Grams says Diskin cider in Nashville has some great ones. Who knew there was cider making in Nashville, Tennessee? I did not know that, I have to say. That's pretty sweet. We got Eleanor in DC says there are a lot of great ones, but Down East original blend holds a special place in my brackets, apple brackets, heart brackets.
It was actually emojis, but I couldn't do the emojis.
Oh, I see.
So, sorry.
My bad.
Got me right in the brackets.
Yeah, parentheses.
The brackets mean extra love.
Yeah. Grant, Down East was a cider that you've been into for a while, isn't it?
It was, yeah. It does hold a special place in my bracket, heart bracket.
Yes.
Bravo.
When we would tour the Northeast, they're a Boston-based urban cidery, and we tried it first in Boston, and we're like, wow, holy shit, this is brilliant. So we got to know the guys, and they would send us slabs of Down East to every time we played in Boston, and yeah, it's great. It's brilliant cider that's it's back sweetened with apple juice, and it's served in a 12-ounce can, is it? The measurements over there, and it's great, smashable, tastes amazing, and would be easy for anyone to drink. I'd love it, and it holds a special place in my heart. From being in Boston and to playing shows in Boston, and getting a kind of more real cider on tap, in a lot of places than I was used to even over here at the time. So yeah.
Grant, did all the guys in Frightened Rabbit like cider, or were you the particular cider guy?
Well, I don't know if it was just that they would kind of humour me, but yeah, it seemed that way. It got a bit annoying because I would request cider, so we had a rider, and I put cider on it.
Stop drinking my cider.
Well, that's it. I put cider on it, and I was like, well, I'm not drinking the beer that's on the rider. Yeah, but then they would all drink the cider, and I was like, well, right, okay, should we just get rid of the beer? It's like, no, don't get rid of the beer, because other folk drink the beer. I'm like, well, fine, if other folk drink the beer, should we add more cider to it then? So yeah, I don't think they weren't quite as into it as I am, but definitely it was the thing that got drank first, which always pissed me off. It's like, man, I put that specifically on there because I don't want to drink beer. And like,
I can imagine being like the one of the stage hands or whatever, and it's like, oh, can you go check on the Frightened Rabbits, make sure they're okay? some complaints, a bit of drama, a bit of divish. And it goes back, opens the curtain, and there's just this Scotsman going like, "Where's all my cider?
Where's all my fucking cider?"
But like you say, I think everyone can agree, when you buy something in the house and you put it in the fridge and then it's gone, you're like, where the fuck is it? And if you're on tour, you've got no home comforts and you just know, all right, I've got my drink, that's my downtime, and that's gone. Grant, I'm actually getting pissed off secondhand.
Good, thank you. I appreciate your support, because it wasn't because I purposefully, or I would put down less. I wasn't like I'm saying 24 slab of Strongbow. It's like, okay, I'll get a few bottles of, and it would generally be Westons, because it's accessible. It's easily found everywhere. Someone's got to go out and buy it during the day before you arrive for the gig, so you don't want to be an arsehole and ask for like a 2016 Art of Darkness.
We want the finest ciders known to humanity.
And then it was gone. I'm like, fuck. And I'd stopped drinking before shows a few years back, so I'd get to, after the show, I'd come back, like a cider. Okay, there's none there.
Hang on. Would you drink before shows? Like, not to be a prude, but there's never a job I've done where I've gone, need a couple of drinks, lads.
Aye. I mean, that's it. Like, I used to drink before shows. Not a lot. Like, I can't play drunk at all. And
no, but how old were you then?
What?
When you were drinking before shows? Just to give a rough idea of your age and mentality in that.
Like 20.
So young and invincible, and could probably in your head do the job when you were a little bit merry.
Well, no, it was an amount to loosen up, I guess. So like, you're talking like a couple of
7% Westerns.
A couple of vintage.
I can't like see playing. I think drums is maybe a different instrument in terms of being able to play in that drunk. Although I've read Mitch Mitchell's book, The Drummer for Jimi Hendrix, and he talks about how acid trips he would have during sets.
Fucking
but I think drink's different, though. It's like very different.
You just had the vintage sweats, and that's about it. Yeah.
But no, I stopped drinking before shows because I was very aware of the fact that people were there to see us. They pay, I'm doing a job. They paid to see us, and I want to do it well. And I would get, by the end of the show, after a couple of ciders, I was a bit merrier. But no, I stopped it. And like you say, any other job, you don't turn up to another job and go, oh, I'm just going to loosen myself off with a couple of Magners before I start. Where I'll get on the tram into work and I'll have a couple of ciders.
Except this
you
job.
Don't do that. Yeah.
But this is the job. The job is loosening us up.
Yes,
I've had it with hospitality for years and years and years.
Yeah, I bet.
I had one job where I had the worst boss in the world. I won't go into it. It's just too long. But they used to just give us loads and loads of shots throughout the whole thing. So there were some shifts where I would pass out because I was young. I'd just moved to London. And I thought, oh, you have to keep up. And it was like, one, ignoring my body health and mental health. You're on minimum wage in late hours. It's fucking brutal drinking that much. Like, absolutely brutal. But I've said in a lot of pubs that I've worked, and even now, like I'm allowed a drink or two on shift, but I won't. I'll have like a half right at clock off time kind of thing. Because if you wouldn't do it in an optician's, I don't know why you do it in a fucking pub. Like, imagine if someone was just like, yeah, I'm just going to take all the contact lens solution. What the fuck are you doing? No, you're not owed it. I pay you money to do the job. You're not owed shit. Fuck you.
Well, and also you like with the whole rider thing with bands, it's like you pay for that.
Yeah.
Like you don't. It's not free booze.
Yeah.
Like it comes out of your fee. It's all decided and it's all paid for by you. So the more you add to your rider, the more extravagant it is. It's the more you're spending on it.
So wait, the boys, when they were saying don't add more cider, they were like, well, yeah, keep the price down, Grant, but we'll drink yours.
Yeah.
And I would hand it in and they'd be like, it's cross off the no strongbow thing.
You like Johnny Vaughan, don't you, Grant?
I love Johnny Vaughan. He was the classic strongbow.
Oh my God.
Anyway, how did we get onto that?
Well, this is the elusive nature of interviewing, Grant, where you suddenly became the guest on a Frightened Rabbit interview.
Yeah.
Wow. I've got so much more to tell you guys.
Let's bring it back to to Scotland. Actually, Richie likes to play. He said, Scottish flag emoji, glass of whiskey emoji. I'm not quite sure that's a cider, Richie. Oh, Rich. Sorry. So there we go. Next up, we have Amanda Jop HD. Amanda Jop HD.
High definition. Yeah. Not Amanda Joe PhD.
It could be Amanda Joe PhD. I just like to think that Amanda Jop is high definition. She recommends Blake's El Chavo. Blake's is it's a Michigan cider maker. I'm not quite sure about El Chavo as the particular product. Pomboy, who is assistant cider maker at Little Pomona. He suggests Revel, Windswept, Alma, Polisson, Somnambule. I'm not quite sure whether those are kind of like Scandi dramas or actual ciders, possibly. Not sure. All right, keeping it going. Zitifeul says Yip Trip. Which I'm not quite sure what that
is. Yip Trip.
Scott just autocorrect's gone wild there, mate. Zip Trip has said yup, lip.
Zip Trip Snip.
And any more, Gabe?
Last one from Insta here was Maeve Duchesne 1, Quebecer here, Citari Milton, Coteau Rougemont. They both make a nice cider, speciality, and McKeown, someone said.
Say it louder and prouder, and then it disguises it.
McGuan. And then we've had loads on Twitter as well, so I'll go through really quickly. Amazing Ciderman says, I'm in Oregon and currently partial to Wildcraft Cider. They were at the Cider Salon in 2019. Portland Cider, Shilling Cider, Two Towns Cider, Rev Nat. Big shout out to Rev Nat. He got in touch the other day. We might well get him on the show at some stage in the future. Evening, Reverend. Raging Cider and Mead, who I do believe are quite close to you, producer Scott, and some good ciders being produced down there. Yeah, he said, I can't believe I left out my favorite Black Duck Cidery, who are New York State, sort of Finger Lakes area. Very, very good minimal intervention cider maker. Saginaw Ciderkin says Uncle John's Cider. That's Michigan. Haken's Cider is Colorado. Very good. Farnham Hill, one of the originators. They've got the biggest planting of bittersweet apples in the USA, pretty much in Vermont. Tilted Shed, Eden, who are obviously great cider makers as well. And South Ciders, Raging Mead also said Eve's, Tilted Shed, etc., etc. And South Ciders, some similar names coming out for Canada. Sea Cider House, which is in British Columbia. Fantastic cider makers there. The proprietor, whose name escapes me momentarily, spent some time as a child as a student in Wales, and got a love for the sort of tannic ciders back then, and so planted tannic ciders up on the farm, quite literally on the coast in BC, and making some spectacular ciders. So as you can tell, that's just the tip of the iceberg, everybody. There are huge numbers of fantastic cider makers out there. Go and check them out.
Yeah, well, I know it's an extensive list, and I'm glad that us as three English guys, three Welsh guys, and
yes, it wasn't me who insulted Grant's Scottishness this week.
You guys don't know, Scott's actually born in England, born in Tewkesbury.
Hello.
Oh my God.
Hello, I'm from Acadie. I'm Scott. No, I'm sorry, Scotland again, but for now you're part of England. I don't care. So we got three.
We are not part of England. Fucking hell. Sorry, I need to stand up for us.
No, I'm taking the mate. So we got 3 people from the United Kingdom and an American, but I'm glad that we've managed to, through our audience, get a list together so that anyone in the States who's listening in and probably can't get bottles that we've got here knows some bangers that we can.
There we go, everyone. That is another episode of Neutral Cider Hotel wrapped up for you. Big thanks once again to Sam and Greg from ANXO Cider for joining us. Once again, as ever, our dear listeners, we love you. And if you enjoy our podcast and want to help, please tell your friends all about us and subscribe, rate and review on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Spotify or via your favorite podcast app. We are on Instagram and Facebook, Neutral Cider Hotel, Twitter, Neutral Cider Pub, and you can also listen and share episodes from our website at neutralciderhotel.com. Thank you all so much for being with us. Once again, we will see you next week. Until next time, wassail to you. Cheers. Goodbye.